What's up, everybody? This your boy Adogg, and once again, I'm back with another video. Now today, we're gonna be checking out part 2 of the hidden truth behind the end of slavery. Now we did do part 1, which the video did well, got over 17,000 views, over 1,200 likes. A lot of y'all was letting me know more about it in the comment section, so I appreciate everybody that left a comment under that video and was asking me to, Adogg, please do part 2 of this. Please do part 2. So since y'all wanted me to do part 2, we're gonna go ahead and do part 2 of the hidden truth behind the end of slavery by Sowell. Now before we get to the video, if you're new to the channel, be sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any of my videos. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive straight into this, y'all. Let's go. And like I said, a lot of time I be learning a lot of stuff in these videos that I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? So let's go.
The British stamped out slavery, not only throughout the British Empire, which included 1/4 of the world, whether measured in land or people, but also by its pressures and its actions against other nations. For example, the British Navy entered Brazilian waters in 1849 and destroyed Brazilian ships that had been used in the slave trade. The British government pressured the Ottoman Empire into banning the African slave trade and, later, threatened to start boarding Ottoman ships in the Mediterranean if that empire did not do a better job of policing the ban. Still later, Americans stamped out slavery in the Philippines. The Dutch stamped it out in Indonesia, the Russians in Central Asia, the French in their West African and Caribbean colonies. Germans, in their East Africa colonies, often hanged slave traders on the spot when they caught them in the act. No non-Western nation or civilization shared this animosity towards slavery that began to develop in the Western world in the late 18th century, reached its peak in the 19th century, and continued to fuel the anti-slavery efforts that were still necessary in much of Africa and the Middle East on into the first half of the 20th century. This worldwide struggle went on for more than a century because the non-Western world in general resisted and evaded all efforts to get them to root out this institution that was an integral part of their economies and societies. When the British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire first raised the issue of abolishing slavery with the Sultan in 1840, he reported this response: "I have been heard with extreme astonishment, accompanied with a smile at a proposition for destroying an institution closely interwoven with the frame of society in this country, and intimately connected with the law and with the habits and even the religion of all classes, from the Sultan himself on down to the lowest peasant." Similarly, the Maoris of New Zealand responded to comments on their enslavement of some fellow Polynesians on other islands by saying, "We took possession in accordance with our customs, and we caught all the people. Not one escaped. Some ran away from us. These we killed, and others we killed. But what of that? It was in accordance with our customs." When British Foreign Secretary Palmerston sought in 1841, through his representative counsel, Atkins Hamerton, to get the ruler of Zanzibar to end the flourishing slave trade there, this was the response. When Palmerston continued to press for an end to the slave trade, Said pleaded that if he acceded to British demands, his subjects would withdraw their loyalty from him and support another claimant to the throne. And was he not looked up to by all Arabs generally as the person who should protect and guarantee for them their dearest interests, the right to carry on the slave trade? He reminded Hamerton that Arabs were not like the English and other European people who were always reading and writing and were unable to understand the anti-slavery viewpoint. The British obsession with it was quite inexplicable to them. In short, what was so patently wrong about slavery, in the eyes of Western civilization of the past 2 centuries, was almost incomprehensible to many non-Westerners. Eventually, some westernized elites or intellectuals in non-Western societies also became embarrassed about slavery, but these societies developed no such fervent anti-slavery movements as those which propelled successive European and European offshoot societies to ban this practice for themselves and to stamp it out, among others. In the Western world, hostility to slavery was by no means confined to elites. When a British ship stopped at Zanzibar in the 19th century, it was considered dangerous to let British sailors go ashore, for fear that they would riot if they saw the slave market there. In the years leading up to the abolition...
Yo, he said the British would have did what again if they got close to the... Hold on.
When a British ship stopped at Zanzibar in the 19th century, it was considered dangerous to let British sailors go ashore, for fear that they would riot if they saw the slave market there.
The British will riot if they saw the slave market there. Yo, that is crazy. So they was already just ready to do something. Like, I guess they didn't like them, so they gonna riot and do what they gotta do, try to kill them or whatnot. Man, that's crazy.
In the years leading up to the abolition of slavery in Brazil, soldiers and their officers no longer believed in the legitimacy of slavery, and so dragged their feet when assigned the task of recapturing runaway slaves. Soldiers continued to be sent to places where slaves. When a British ship stopped at Zanzibar in the 19th century, it was considered dangerous to let British sailors go ashore, for fear that they would riot if they saw the slave market there. In the years leading up to the abolition of slavery in Brazil, soldiers and their officers no longer believed in the legitimacy of slavery, and so dragged their feet when assigned the task of recapturing runaway slaves.
So they said soldiers and officers, like, they didn't care, like the slaves that did run away. Instead of them trying to go capture them, they didn't really worry about it because they just stopped believing in it. Dang. Yo, so I believe that is pretty good. So since some of the slaves did run away, and then the soldiers and the officers, they weren't going to try to run them down and either kill them, hurt them, torture them, whatever they was going to do. So they was like, you know what, forget it, man. Okay.
Soldiers continued to be sent to places where slaves were on the loose, but were not afraid to express their unwillingness to capture fugitives. The commander of an army unit sent to a community in São Paulo early in 1888 agreed to maintain order, but openly declined to capture slaves. In places runaways were loitering on the roads, refusing to work. Army units sent to control them did nothing. Not all Brazilian soldiers refused orders to control or recaptured escaped slaves, but there was enough opposition to this role that a formal request was made to the civil authorities by the military to relieve them of this distasteful duty. With public opinion increasingly hostile to the continuation of slavery, and many Brazilians keenly aware of and painfully embarrassed by the fact that their country was the last one in the Western world to still have slavery, the plantation owners were increasingly isolated, and some began freeing their slaves themselves in anticipation of official emancipation, and in some cases in hopes of retaining these workers as employees.
Did they say the Brazilian was the last one to still have slaves? And they released some of them? Let me
slavery, and many Brazilians keenly aware of and painfully embarrassed by the fact that their country was the last one in the Western world to still have slavery.
Oh, they was embarrassed because that was the Brazilian was the only country to still have slaves, while everybody else didn't. So that's why they let some of them go.
The plantation owners were increasingly isolated, and some began freeing their slaves themselves in anticipation of official emancipation, and in some cases in hopes of retaining these workers as employees. Thus, when the official date of emancipation arrived in Brazil, most slaves were already free, either having been freed by plantation owners or having simply left the plantations on their own, secure in the knowledge that the surrounding population was not likely to cooperate in their recapture and return. Still, when the official day of emancipation arrived, it was a cause of national celebration. The novelist Machado de Assis recalled that the celebrations following the passage of the Golden Law were the only instance of popular delirium that I can remember ever having seen. One São Paulo newspaper described the crowds that gathered to celebrate. To try to describe the splendor of that festival of joy, to tell everything that happened, falls beyond our abilities. Never has this capital seen such multitudinous and unanimous enthusiasm. Perhaps at no other period of history was the contrast between the Western and the non-Western world greater. Here was the scene when the Ottoman Empire announced the end of the slave trade. In 1855, when the Sultan's firman was read out in Mecca and Jeddah, it caused a revolution. Turkish officials, including the Qadi who read the firman, were murdered, the garrison shut, and Mecca was in a state of revolt until the Porte repealed the obnoxious order. And when the Governor General of the Hejaz issued orders on 25th February 1860 forbidding the slave trade in all Turkish ports in the Red Sea, there was great excitement and fear of the recurrence of the 1855 violence. There was no Ottoman cruiser in the Red Sea capable of giving effect to this order, and Turkish officials were too frightened to enforce it. Although the
one thing I can say, I have been like learning some stuff, like compared to the last video, I've been learning some stuff that I didn't know about, especially from like in school in my early days. Like I did not hear half of this stuff. Like I said before in the last video, I heard some of it, but not half of the stuff that Thomas Sowell is talking about. Like the Brazilians been the last one to still have slaves, and they was embarrassed by it, so they decided to free some of them. Like I didn't even know that, yo. I literally didn't. And shout out to y'all for like helping me out in the comment section, because y'all let me know more about a lot of stuff as well. So shout out to y'all as well.
Slave trade was formally abolished in the Ottoman Empire. Under pressure from the British government, slavery itself continued. As of 1891, the imperial palace purchased 11 slave girls for its harem, as others in the Ottoman Empire purchased women as concubines, typically white women from a region near the Caucasus and the Black Sea, known as Circassia, even though every nation in the Western world had by then outlawed slavery.
Yo, hold on. What is concubines? I need to know what the name of that is, y'all. He said as concubines. Hold on. What is concubines? Concubinage is a interpersonal and sexual relationship between a man and a woman in which the couple does not work or cannot enter into a full marriage. That's exactly what he say. Hold on.
The imperial palace purchased 11 slave girls for its harem, as others in the Ottoman Empire purchased women as concubines, typically.
So, it said they purchased women as concubines. Like I said, concubinage is an interpersonal and sexual relationship between a man and a woman in which the couple does not work or cannot enter into a full marriage. Yo.
White women from a region near the Caucasus and the Black Sea, known as Circassia, even though every nation in the Western world had by then outlawed slavery. Not only the Turks accepted such slavery, so did the Circassians. Mothers often groomed their daughters for this role and sold them into what was considered to be a desirable situation, at least by comparison with what was available in Circassia. British Foreign Secretary Palmerston said, "The only complaint we have ever heard from the Circassians has been against our attempts to stop the traffic." Contrary to the myths to live by, created by Alex Haley and others, Africans were by no means the innocents portrayed in Roots, baffled as to why white men were coming in and taking their people away in chains. On the contrary, the region of West Africa from which Kunta Kinte supposedly came was one of the great slave trading regions of the continent, before, during, and after the white man arrived. It was Africans who enslaved their fellow Africans, selling some of these slaves to Europeans or to Arabs and keeping others for themselves. Even at the peak of the Atlantic slave trade, Africans retained more slaves for themselves than they sent to the Western Hemisphere.
Yo, that is crazy, bro. Like I said, like I just learning about a lot of history is what I like. I like learning history because that kind of get me up to speed of what I didn't know or what I didn't know about. So that's the reason why I said, even though I'm listening to what Thomas Sowell is saying, and I'm also listening to what you guys saying in the comment section as well, because a lot of y'all been telling me some good stuff as well. So that's why I said before, I appreciate all of you. If y'all like to see me do more Thomas Sowell, let me know down in the comment section below. I see y'all were asking me to check this one out, which I wanted to, but y'all kept saying it, so hey, we did it. But we have made it to the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It's your boy Adogg, and I'm gonna catch y'all in the next one.